of Krishna consciousness. You know, that chanting your 16 rounds, waking up early, worshipping deity, eating only Krishna prasadam. There's steadiness of the mind, always thinking about Krishna. There's steadiness of speech, only speaking things that are truthful, pleasing, beneficial, not agitating to others based on the Vedas. And then there's also steadiness of good qualities. Now Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Haribo. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that steadiness of good qualities is something that comes from bhakti rather than something that produces bhakti. So it's not that if you have all good qualities that you become a devotee, but rather if you become a devotee you have all good qualities. And there's many places where Srila Prabhupada says, and this actually relates to something we were just talking about on the break, there are many places where Prabhupada says that these good qualities come automatically, that we don't have to make a separate endeavor to develop these good qualities. But then there's, I was just listening to a lecture where Prabhupada was talking about the divine and demoniac qualities. And he said that we should intentionally cultivate these qualities. So this is also kind of a conundrum. Do we intentionally cultivate the qualities, or do they come of their own accord? And the answer is kind of both. It's just like when we're going from a child to an adult. Our intelligence naturally matures and develops without our doing anything about it at all. But at the same time, we have our children intentionally develop their intelligence. Yes? Right? We don't just say, well, your intelligence is naturally going to mature. So it's kind of both. Huh? The thing is that we don't have to develop these qualities separately from bhakti. And the example I always give is that Prabhupada would say that you don't have to cultivate being a vegetarian separately from bhakti. It happens automatically, but automatically doesn't mean that I go to the supermarket blindfolded and I just throw everything in the cart. Right? I still have to read the labels, but that it's part of my bhakti. And it's something like, you know, if I'm going to offer a food preparation to Krishna, I want it to be very nice. But the main thing that I'm offering to Krishna is not food. The main thing I'm offering to Krishna is myself. So I want to offer Krishna something that's nice. I don't want to offer Krishna, you know, myself being a nasty, selfish, dirty, inconsiderate. That's not a very nice offering to make to Krishna. So in that way, developing these Vaishnava qualities are part of my bhakti. Another allegory you can think of, so those of you who are married, you can think of that you develop good qualities as a way of enhancing your marriage. Now, there are certain good qualities in yourself that you might not develop if you weren't married. You might not care. Right? Let's say you had a habit before you were married of throwing your dirty laundry on the floor. And after you got married, your spouse said, would you please throw your dirty laundry in a bin? So for yourself, you might not care. You might say, well, I don't care. But to please my husband, to please my wife, I will start putting my dirty laundry in a bin. So I also see that development of these qualities of part of bhakti is something like that. Because I want to love Krishna and because I want to please Krishna, therefore I go and work at developing these qualities. But in another sense, the qualities do come about on their own. That as I progress in bhakti, my real identity as a soul becomes more and more uncovered, and I naturally have all these qualities as a soul. You know, they're already there. And of course, the allegory that Srila Prabhupada gives for that is of a child learning how to walk. As soon as a child is born, one of the APGAR scores for a child is you hold up the little baby and it naturally puts one foot in front of another. That's what a healthy baby will do. It naturally tries to walk. So the walking propensity is there in a child. But if the child doesn't make any effort to practice learning how to walk, that natural walking propensity never develops. So in one sense, it's part of the child. It doesn't have to come from an outer source. And on the other hand, it's something that they have to work on. So these Vaishnava qualities, it's sort of this situation where they naturally come as a part of bhakti, and at the same time, as a part of bhakti, we work on developing them. So now that you're all thoroughly confused, We can think about, why should we care about developing Vaishnava qualities? Well, if we don't care about developing Vaishnava qualities to please Krishna, and maybe we're not at that point, that Krishna's pleasure is enough of our impetus for us, then at least we can care about developing these qualities, because all of our suffering in this world comes from a lack of these qualities. Say, well, I thought our suffering comes from our bad karma. But why do we do bad karma? Because we have some bad qualities. Why do I steal? Why do I, why am I violent? Why do I cheat? Why do I lie? Because I have these bad qualities. Is that logical? The reason I do bad things that give me bad karma is that there's something wrong within me that's pushing me to do these bad things. So if we want to please Krishna, we want to make Krishna happy because we're on that level, and if we're just tired of suffering in this world and we'd like to work on that level, either way, we want to cultivate the qualities that are ours by nature. Basically, we want to put ourselves in a position where we can develop and cultivate that which is our natural situation. So here we have, you can just see your basic sheet there, which is kind of an outline here. That we start off, why are we suffering in this world? And the problem is that we actually take shelter of these bad qualities. We feel that these bad qualities are our shelter. When we talk about the anartas, and of course the big ones are lust, anger, and greed, right? Trividam narakashidam, dwaram nasanam atmana, kama krotas tata lobas, tasmade tvatayam tajet, lust, anger, and greed. But any of the bad qualities, envy, illusion, fear, we're holding on to them because we think that they will help us in some way. Right? Let's say somebody has betrayed you or deceived you, and then you're holding on to this anger at them because you think, well, if I keep being really angry at them, then they won't cheat me in the future. I'll protect myself with my anger, or I'll protect myself with my fear. Right? If I don't hold on to my lust, then I won't care about my spouse anymore, and I'll just be irresponsible and I'll leave, so I have to hold on to my lust. So we actually take shelter. Krishna uses these words, kam ashrita and ahankar ashrita in the Bhagavad Gita, where we're holding on to some bad quality. And we don't want to let go of it. We're holding on to anger or fear or greediness or envy or lust because we're thinking that I need this quality as a motivating force. And that puts us under the shelter of Durga. Whereas if I let go of these and I start developing my good qualities, it puts me under the shelter of Srimati Radharani. And having this understanding means that we know that our difficulties in life don't come from our situation. They don't come from my spouse or my children or my parents or my boss or my employees or my financial situation or my health situation. They come from this problem that I have of holding on to my anartas instead of letting go of them and developing my natural good qualities. So I want to look at a few of them here. So we have some examples here on this paper. I want to look at actually 4 of them. Humility and pridelessness, respectful to all and not demanding respect for oneself, lack of interest in material things, and being mannerly and poetic. So humility and pridelessness, Prabhupada defines these in the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. He defines humility as not wanting the satisfaction of being honored by others. So most of us are hankering for that satisfaction of being, when am I going to be honored by others? When am I going to be honored by others? And if we're not being honored by others, we try to hint at why we should be honored by them, right? We try to say something. Well, I did this, and I did that, and then I did this, and I did. We're trying to somehow hint to them, please give me some honor. And pridelessness, Prabhupada defines as not being proud of one's religiousness, or not taking up a religious process for name and fame. So what would be the opposite of that? If we actually developed humility and pridelessness, what would that look like? If we didn't hanker to be honored by others, if we didn't take up religion for name and fame. And in doing, I have a separate seminar on humility, but in doing a really careful analysis of the humble devotees as described in the Shastra, I find that they're not always self-effacing. Sometimes. You have Krishnadas Kaviraj who says, I'm lower than a worm in stool. Anyone who says my name becomes sinful, which is interesting since his name is Krishnadas. But, they're sometimes making these very self-effacing statements, but they don't seem to live there. It's not that they're going around being self-effacing all the time, and they're certainly not going around being what we would call low self-esteem. There's a lot of medical research to show that people with low self-esteem are more likely to have chronic illness, by the way. So I don't think that's something, what we consider low self-esteem and what we might think of as humility is not what we're talking about. And right after Krishnadas Kaviraj says, I'm lower than the worm in stool, anyone who says my name becomes sinful, he then goes on to say, but I've gotten the mercy of Lord Nityananda. And I have the service of Radha Krishna in Vrindavan. We find a similar statement by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, where he's saying to Lord Chaitanya, you've delivered the whole world, and that's not a very great thing, but you've delivered me, that's a very great thing. And he said, by your mercy, you've turned a crow into Garuda. So in each of these cases, Krishnadas Kaviraj and Sarvabhauma, they say these self-effacing comments, and then they immediately go on and say how they become glorious by grace. They're saying, on my own account, I'm nothing, but by grace and by mercy, I become glorious. So I see that a key component to humility and pridelessness is gratitude. Seeing everything that we get as a gift, not taking personal credit for my talents and my abilities or my devotion. Now, if I have no personal credit, why would I want to be honored? Right? Why would I want to be honored for something that's a gift? Does everybody follow? What I'd want is I'd want to honor the gift giver. If someone says, oh, you have such beautiful talent in painting, and I say, well, this is actually the gift of my teacher, then I want my teacher to be honored. Yes? I'd say, well, okay, I've put in the time and the practice, fine, but really this is the gift of my teacher. And without the gift of my teacher, all the time and the practice in the world I would put in, I would have been practicing it wrong. So my effort is only meaningful because I've gotten this guidance. And therefore there's gratitude. And one is not interested in being honored for oneself. And I see this attitude as being very connected with honesty. I really see humility as being just absolute, total authenticity. That who am I? Sudama Brahman also says that. Who am I? I'm just the poor son of a Brahmana. Who am I? What am I? I mean, each of us thinks that we're very important, but as soon as you go up in an airplane, we immediately disappear. Right? You don't have to go very high in an airplane before the people disappear. You get to a point when you're landing where you see the cars, but you have to almost be on the ground before you see the people. We're really so insignificant. And our life and everything is known to only a handful of people who aren't even that concerned. I mean, it's sort of interesting. Even our own family members are often not that concerned about what we do and what we think and what we're interested in. Isn't that a fact? If you go to a close friend or family member and say, let me tell you everything I did today, maybe they'll be interested for 5 minutes and then their attention will wander. So it's honesty. I'm not that important except to myself and to God. I'm really not that important. The world was going on before I was born. The world is going to go on after I die. Even if I do something amazing that's in the history books for 2,000 years, eventually it will be lost and forgotten. And most of us will be lost and forgotten a lot sooner than that. What I always ask is, how many of you know all the names of your great-great-grandparents? So that means our great-great-grandchildren will not know our name. That's the grandchildren of our grandchildren. So like right now I have a child of a grandchild, but he's only 1 year old. So, but his children will not know my name. And I'm thinking, how could his children not know my name? But I don't know the names of my great-great-grandparents. Not all of them, maybe one. So it's just authenticity. How significant am I that even in my own family, after a couple generations, nobody will know my name. In my own family, what to speak of in the world, what to speak of in the history books. Or if I get in the history books, I'll simply be a disturbing thing to memorize on a test. Oh man, I got to remember her name. What did she do again? So it's just being authentic. And what can I do? We all have the experience of getting ill when then we can't do anything, right? You get a high fever and you can't even get out of bed. So I can think, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm accomplishing this, I'm accomplishing that. But am I really? With what ability? It's all given to me. So being very authentic. I see humility as being very grateful and being very authentic. And then finally, humility is very joyful. I think a lot of us think of humility and pridelessness as being something really miserable. That I have to go around thinking, I'm insignificant. No one's going to remember me anyway. Nobody cares about me anyway. Everything's just stupid and useless, and I can't even do anything. You know, this sort of very depressed view. But it's actually very joyful because it removes us of all this falsity. I don't have to pretend to anybody that I'm great and I'm important. I can just be who I am. You know, we spend so much time and energy as materialistic people trying to prove what we're not and trying to show off to other people and to brag to other people and try to establish ourselves in the world. And, you know, then you're just relieved of all this burden and you can just have this gratitude for Krishna. Oh, Krishna, thank you very much for giving me all this. And it becomes a very loving relationship with Krishna. Looking at respectful to all others and not demanding respect. So, of course, this is the essence of the Trinadapi verse of the Shikshashtaka, which Bhaktivinoda Thakur identifies as the gateway between unsteady bhakti and steady bhakti. So I get asked frequently all over the world, how can I become steady in my bhakti? How can I become steady in my bhakti? Now, maybe they're asking about how do I chant 16 rounds every day without fail, or maybe they're asking how can I think of Krishna all day without fail. Whatever kind of steadiness that they're looking for, I always respond by saying that as long as we're still covered by anarthas, steadiness is impossible, according to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. One has to be at least 50% free of anarthas in order to become steady. And the demarcation line, according to Bhaktivinoda's Bhajana Rahasya, between being unsteady and being steady is this Trinadapi verse. Showing everyone else respect and not expecting respect for oneself. And I remember years ago saying to one devotee that it just seems like such an intimidating doorway to go through. And she said, no, it's just a door. It's nothing intimidating about it at all. So what does this mean? And I think in 2019, this particular quality of a devotee is very hard to understand because we're living in a society that has a rights mentality. That I have rights, and you all have to respect my rights. And if you all don't respect my rights, I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to go to the government, or I'm going to make a big stink, or I'm going to punish you in some way. And this concept of not expecting any respect for oneself is so contrary to this concept of a rights mentality that I think at this present time it just kind of grates us the wrong way, and we put up everything as a rebellion against it. But if we look at what is the nature of the spiritual world, the nature of the spiritual world is that everyone respects and appreciates everyone else. Now, if we're in a society where everyone respects and appreciates everyone else, there's no need to ask for respect and appreciation for oneself. Because everybody's naturally giving it to everybody. Now imagine in our ISKCON society, if everybody was respecting and appreciating everybody, then we would have all the respect and appreciation that we needed, and we wouldn't have to think about it. It's kind of like when you work for a company that gives you a more than sufficient salary, and gives you everything you need for your job and gives you vacation times and maybe they even throw your birthday party, you don't have to worry about yourself. You can just think about the job. I mean, that was, I don't know if this is even sayable today, but that was the concept of a traditional wife. That she just didn't have to worry about being maintained. She could just take care of serving her husband, serving the family. Or children in a proper home. You know, the children in a proper home, they don't have to worry, am I going to get food and clothes and education? They can just concentrate on what they need to do, and, you know, mommy and daddy are going to take care of me. So whether it's your parents, your spouse, your employer, or in a good government, I don't know if any of those exist in 2019, but if you're under a good government and they took care of you, you didn't have to think about it. You just think, well, how can I be a good citizen? How can I follow the law? And the government provides for you. So if we're in a society where respect and appreciation is everywhere, one forgets about that for oneself. So I think the only way that we can come to this place without being in that kind of a society, and unfortunately, we're probably not going to make ISKCON be exactly like Vaikuntha in the next couple hours. Although we can all do our part to make it like Vaikuntha, is to get that respect and appreciation from Krishna. I think a lot of us try to develop this Vaishnava quality by trying to repress the desire for respect and appreciation. By saying, well, I'm just not going to care if anybody ever respects or appreciates me. And that doesn't work, does it? Eventually it comes out, isn't it a fact? Eventually it comes out and you'll say, well, what about me? I've been appreciating everybody else and respecting everybody else. What about me? But I really like the place in Krishna book where Akura is going to Vrindavan. And he says, Krishna will call me Uncle Akura. And then my whole life will be successful. And Prabhupada comments there in Krishna book, he said, anyone who's not working to be recognized by Krishna is condemned. And I'm like, oh, that desire to be recognized, to be respected, to be appreciated, it's not that it's meant to be denied or repressed. It's that one is meant to get that from God. One is meant to feel that Krishna appreciates me, Krishna respects me. And if I'm getting that from Krishna, I'm going to feel fully satisfied. And if I'm fully satisfied, why would I care if anybody else respects or appreciates me? The reality is, in this world, we are going to be disrespected and unappreciated all the time. We're going to be disrespected and unappreciated by the people we do the most for. In fact, those are often the people who take us the most for granted. It's the people you work for every day and cook for every day and take care of every day that are least likely to respect what you're doing for them. Ironically so. Yes? So developing this quality is very dependent on developing that relationship with Krishna, where I feel that satisfaction from Krishna. Krishna sees, Krishna knows, Krishna respects. And then I'm so full with that that I can give to others without caring about myself. Now we should mention with all of these Vaishnava qualities, they're not on-off switches. It's not that either you're demanding that everybody respect you all the time or you're totally satisfied with Krishna. These are gradual. So as we advance in Krishna consciousness, we should start seeing that it takes more and more and more extreme kinds of disrespect to upset us. You know, if you're really in the mode of ignorance, a tiny amount of somebody disrespecting us, right? And if you're really in the mode of goodness, it takes a lot. Like we see these great yogis, they do eventually curse people, but it takes a lot to set them off. Right? And if you're a pure devotee, nothing sets you off. If you curse people, if you so-called curse people, it's for their benefit, not because you're insulted. Right? So this is one thing we should see as we're advancing in bhakti. Do I feel more and more satisfied with Krishna? And less concerned, less and less affected and disturbed by when others treat me in a disrespectful or unappreciative way? And am I able to respect even people that I don't like? Am I able to respect even people who have done wrong and sinful things? Am I able to respect people who disagree with me about topics that I feel are absolutely crucial? You know, the topics in life that this is a make it or break it topic. This is really, but can I still respect people who have an opposite point? Can I respect everybody? At least as a soul. You know, maybe you're an abortionist hunter, but you're still a soul. I respect you as a spiritual being that Krishna is in your heart. I don't have to agree with you killing babies and animals, but I respect that you're a soul. And of course, we see the great devotees. We saw Prabhupada doing that. You know, we saw that Srila Prabhupada was respectful to everybody. Lack of interest in material things. So a lot of times people read this kind of quality and think, well, that means I don't care about a house, I don't care about a car, I don't care about clothes. You know, I just throw my clothes on the floor, I don't change the oil in my car. And we sometimes find that kind of interpretation from people who live in a temple ashram, right? Well, why take care of the car? It's nobody's car. It's not my car. And then for people who own a car, they have the other kind of nonsense. Well, I take care of it because it's my car. But the Vaishnava quality is I take care of it because it's Krishna's. I'm not attached to it in and of itself. If Krishna wants to give it, I take care of it. If Krishna wants to take it away, he can take it away. So, of course, we can practice this with the little things so that we can actually put it into effect with the big things. There's a very famous story, and it's a true story, in the Jewish tradition about this one rabbi who had two very well-behaved, scholarly, and religious sons. So one time when the rabbi was out teaching, both of his sons died of a sudden illness. And when he came back to his house, his wife met him at the door and said, "My dear husband, some time ago a wealthy man was passing through and asked me to keep 2 jewels for him." This was in the days before banks. She said, "Today he came by and asked for them back. What should I do?" So this is actually the mood of a devotee. That even the people in my life, what to speak of the possessions in my life, these are all lent to me by Krishna. They're not mine. They're not mine for me to enjoy. They're mine for me to take care of. But they're not mine for me to enjoy separately from Krishna. They're certainly not mine for me to destroy. It's not like, well, this is my toy that I can tear apart if I want to. No, this is Krishna's who's given it to me for me to take care of. No, so it's mine in that sense. It's mine in that sense. And then being mannerly and poetic. So in the spiritual world, when people walk, it looks like they're dancing, and when they talk, it sounds like they're singing. So I'm wondering if their talk must sound like the South Indian languages, which always sound to me like music. And what to speak of when they're actually singing or when they're actually dancing, just to imagine what that looks like. And we find the verses in the Shastra, these are verses that were, as far as we understand, just spoken spontaneously by people. But they're all in poetry. Not all, but most of them are in poetry. So that people were able to speak just spontaneously and naturally in a way with meter and rhyme and alliteration and so many poetic ornaments. So these are certainly things that we can practice and cultivate. And Srila Prabhupada wanted all the devotees to write every day. We can also practice writing poetry, reciting the verses. And certainly we should all be mannerly. Of course, what's considered good manners is different from one country to another. Those of you who brought up in India and then moved to America certainly found that out, yes? That what was considered good manners in India might not necessarily be considered good manners in America and vice versa. Yes? I can always tell when an Indian's been in America for a while, when they ask me if I want a cup of water and I say no and they don't give me one anyway. Right? It's like, okay, they must be living in this country for a while. So although there's different standards of what constitutes good manners, the concept, again, of having proper etiquette and dealing with others according to the time, place, and circumstance is something that all devotees should be practicing. It doesn't mean that we have to buy a book on etiquette and figure out what fork to put where. but we should try to understand the situation that we're in and what's considered proper behavior in that particular place. At least there should be a lack of crudeness. I think something that's become more prevalent in the modern age is crudeness as kind of, it's kind of cool to be crude, right? To sprinkle your conversations with swear words, to wear clothing that look like you're a homeless person even though you have, $100,000 in the bank. And just the way people even walk and sit and talk to each other and, combing their hair in an uncombed style and all kinds of things basically where crudeness becomes the fashion. So what I understand here is that devotees should not be crude. They should be mannerly within the situation that they're and the time, place, and circumstance they're in. So those are a few that I wanted to talk about. And how we can develop these qualities. Well, all qualities are developed on 3 platforms: thinking, feeling, and willing. So it's not just what we do, it's what we think about them, how we feel about them. So it's not just a behavior. We can't cultivate humility just as a behavior. It also has to be cultivating particular types of thoughts and particular types of feelings. Another way to cultivate these good qualities is by hearing stories of great devotees who have these qualities. And I talk about this in some of my other seminars, the power of stories to transform us. Having friends who have these qualities is very helpful. Right? The higher the quality of your friends, the higher the quality one will be. So there's a lot of social science research that shows that a lot of behavior is, we could say, contagious within a community. And that's even true within your virtual community. So even if you're not in the same geographical location, right, whatever is considered normal among one's friends, one is likely to do. Mm-hmm. And serving people who manifest those qualities. And then recognizing in ourselves how we're behaving and how we could improve. So I want to spend the rest of this time doing. I've given you a list here of the 26 qualities of a devotee. Now, these are not the only qualities of a devotee. There's also the list of 50 qualities given in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, or the Nectar of Devotion, that Krishna has a list of 64 and the Jivas have a list of 50. And then there's also other places where the qualities of a devotee are described, but there's not a particular list. There's a number of places where Arjuna says, what's the quality of the devotee? So this 26 qualities of a devotee is not like the list, and it's only the list, not like that. But I thought it was a useful list to work from. And I also thought it was useful to take a look at how these qualities have been translated. In most of the cases, these are Prabhupada's translations, obviously from the 11th canto, or from the BBT translators, Gopi Pranadanda, Hridayananda Maharaj, and Dravida. But to see that how Srila Prabhupada translates the same Sanskrit word in different places. So we've listed the Sanskrit word. I didn't put diacritics in this document. We have the Sanskrit word here that's underlined, and then under it are all the different ways that it's translated in different places. And I wanted to give this out because I feel that looking at the various translations gives us a little bit more depth to the understanding of the meaning of the quality. So what I'd like to do is ask all of you to look at this and think about which quality here would you like us to talk about and explore. Yes. Clean. Okay, where is that one? Suchi, clean, internally and externally clean. Okay, well, Srila Prabhupada said cleanliness is next to godliness. So we have internally and externally. Of course, externally, taking a bath at least once a day. Some places Prabhupada talked about twice a day. Sometimes he talked about 3 times a day. And sometimes Prabhupada said 3 times a day for the sannyasis and twice a day for the grihastas. But at least once a day, one should get clean. Of course, in the medieval Europe, some of those people only took a bath a few times a lifetime. Did you know that? One thing is that in the tropical climates, people are more inclined to take frequent baths, isn't it? Yes. First of all, the water temperature is more pleasant, and second of all, you feel dirty and sweaty and stinky more often. But keeping the body clean, Rupa Goswami says we should wash our teeth every day. He said it's an offense not to wash our teeth every day. And we're not supposed to touch the body of the deity when we have, oil on our body or perspiration. So that kind of cleanliness. And then, of course, our space. Prabhupada would always have his space cleaned once a day. And Prabhupada would often do this thing of putting cloths on the floor that were changed every day. We have to say very frankly that having rugs on the floor is probably not very clean. Sorry. I didn't bring up the but you have to blame him. I remember in New Vrindavan, we lived in a temple house that had rugs in it. Generally, if we had, if my husband and I had our own say about things, we wouldn't stay in a place with rugs. But this was a temple-owned place. And so there was a broken vacuum cleaner in the house. And so I was able to get a carpet washer, one that cleaned the carpet with water. And I washed that carpet twice a week. How long did we live there? Maybe 8 months. I think it took 6 weeks before the water would turn black. So I used a carpet washer where it sprays water on the rug and then you vacuum up the water and there's some kind of detergent mixed with the water. And I was doing that twice a week. And it was like 6 weeks that every time I do it, the water would turn black from all the dirt in the rugs. So, rugs may give the appearance of cleanliness, but actually they're really completely filthy, dirty things. So this same thing, oh boy, I'm going to make a lot of enemies here. You're never going to have me back here in this temple. But I was talking to, should have picked a different one. I was talking to Nasinga Kavacha Prabhu when I was in Australia, New Govardhan. He's the deity worship minister. And he was going on and on about people who have their own deities but don't worship them every day. He was saying, you should keep your deity worship simple enough so that you can give the deities a bath and change their clothes every day. So not only do we want a bath every day, but our deities should be bathed every day. Oh my God, should I say all these things? And I brought up to him, what about people who have a piece of cloth on their altar? And he's like, yes! How can you have cloth on your altar? So many times I visit people's houses and they have a piece of furniture and then there's cloth and the deities are on top of the cloth. And he was saying, there's no way that's clean. I said, yeah, unless you're washing the cloth every day, which nobody ever does that. And so on the cloth is little bits of incense, ash, and little bits of dried flowers, and maybe little bits of food, and all kinds of stuff like that. So at least our altar should be clean, the deity should be clean. Frankly, like Prabhupada said that, home worship means every day the deities get a bath and a new set of clothes. If you can't do that, just have a picture on your altar, or deities that don't need to be dressed or something like that. And of course, our clothes should be clean. When I was growing up in American culture, we definitely did not wash our clothes after every time we wore them. So, you'd wear the same skirt maybe 15, 20 times and then take it to the dry cleaner. And that was kind of standard operating procedure. Or people's business suits, right? Where you wear them over and over, and all you're washing is what you're wearing under it. And so this idea of washing your clothes every day that you wear them, always having clean clothes. And so the floors being clean, the clothes being clean, body being clean, teeth being clean. And of course, equally if not more important is being clean inside. So there's plenty of people who live in a very clean environment, their home, their clothes, their bodies are very clean. But how are we going to be clean inside? So this has to do with the modes of nature in bhakti. So basically, if we're doing things in the mode of ignorance, if we're eating food in the mode of ignorance or watching things, listening to things in the mode of ignorance, then our insides are going to be full of lust, anger, greed, envy, illusion, which is all kind of like this slimy, yucky stuff that's filling up our heart. Mystic yogis, if they look at somebody in the mode of ignorance, they actually see that. That's what it looks like to them. They'll look at someone, they'll go, oh, there's like all this slimy stuff inside them. That's what they see the mode of ignorance looking like, And the more that one gets to the mode of goodness, the more clean one is. Just like Krishna says, it's just a beautiful thing at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, where he says that those in the mode of ignorance, they don't know what is to be done, what is not to be done. what is binding, what is liberating. Those in the mode of passion, they sometimes get it right, and those in the mode of goodness, they can tell what's good and what's bad. So you can compare it to a dark curtain over windows where you can't see outside at all, a translucent window where you see light and vague shapes, or a clear window, and then in bhakti you're actually outside. So being clean inside means having our consciousness so that we can see things as they are. We can understand our motives, we can understand how to behave, we can understand what to do. Imagine how wonderful our life would be if we could understand what's the result of my decisions. In terms of cleanliness, I think of it like cleaning the windshield in your car. So you can actually see where we're going. Okay, well, now that I've made enemies out of everybody here, so what's another one somebody would like me to discuss? Yes? Akrita droha. Okay, we talked about being humble, and we talked about having respect for others. We already talked about that to some extent. Does not quarrel with anyone. So most of our quarrels are about our ego. Just honestly, most of our quarrels are, I'm defending my ego, and I want to show that I'm right, and I'm attacking others as a way of defense. Now, we're fine to have debates with atheists and impersonalists in order to establish truth, but that should not be done just to show that we're right, but to actually establish truth. So there's different types of ways of discussion. There's Vada and Vitalpa and Jalpa, which we discuss in our Shastric Advisory Council Hermeneutics program, which we're working on. But the idea is that our discussion should be to find truth, not to just establish our own ego and not to just establish our own position. And if we start becoming clean inside and we start coming more to the mode of goodness and finally to transcendence, we'll start to see that the vast majority, like way over 95%, of our quarrels are simply a kind of defense. And they're simply trying to cover up the fact that I know that I'm very tiny and insignificant. It's basically that instead of dealing with the fact that I'm tiny and insignificant and dependent on the Lord and that everything I have is the grace of the Lord, I'm trying to pretend that I'm something that I'm not. And I have this big burden of trying to maintain this falsity all the time. Another one. We have time for probably two more. Huh? Gambira. Very grave, yeah? Where is that? Last page. Very grave. This is the name of the place where Mahaprabhu lived. His room in Jagannath Puri was called the Gambira. So, of course, when we say that devotees are very grave, we don't mean that they're not jolly. Prabhupada said if you're not joyful, you can't be making any advancement. And one of the signs of advancement in Krishna consciousness is that one is joyful. And we find, like, there's this pastime where Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and Ramananda Roy are playing in the water like children. And Lord Chaitanya remarks to one of his associates, why are they playing like children? And they said, that's because they are so joyful in Krishna consciousness, Mahaprabhu. So we find the devotees are very joyful and in one sense very childlike in a kind of innocence. But at the same time, they're very grave in the sense of not wasting time and not just being frivolous about things that are useless. That doesn't mean they're not joyful, it doesn't mean they're not happy, and it doesn't mean they don't have any recreation. I was very fortunate when I was in Dallas. So one member of our Shastric Advisory Council, Hari Parshad Prabhu, was giving a class on Krishna conscious poetry, and he's going to be giving that same class in North Carolina, probably within about an hour, and it should be broadcast live. And it just, wow, what Krishna conscious recreation was that? What an amazing class. He was going in this class about, he just looked at one literary ornament used in the Shastra and in Vaishnava poetry of alliteration. And so he was giving examples of increasing and increasing and increasing amounts of alliteration. And I don't want to spoil this for those of you who are going to turn in live today. But he finally gets to a really amazing example. And so we were all just meditating on Krishna and Balaram and Ramachandra and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and all these incarnations. Nrsimhadev was one of them, and all the acharyas and the shastras. But we were having so much fun. I mean, we were all just it was just incredible fun, and we really all got transported to Vrindavan in this joyful mood. So I saw that class as just an exemplary example. That's terrible. Just a prime example of how one could be grave and yet very joyful and full of laughter at the same time. Everything we were discussing, it was all very serious, and it was all very spiritual, and it was all very transcendental. It wasn't the slightest bit frivolous. At the same time, it was just completely playful. In fact, the most grave and serious things are Krishna's Leela and Krida. Krishna's Leela means sports. Krishna means to play. You know? Of course, we have even in this world where Peter Burwash was now he's a lecturer and a teacher, but he was a very famous tennis player. And when he saw Prabhupada, Prabhupada said, "Play tennis for Krishna." So how to connect everything with Krishna consciousness. It's not that one has to go around being, "I am very grave, and I'm very serious all the time, and I don't want to have any fun in Krishna consciousness." I mean, frankly, if we think Krishna consciousness is like that, why would anybody want to take it up? I don't think that's not what I would call all attractive. Okay, we have time for one more. Yes? Where is that one? Well, I don't know. I just had this homemade carob ice cream right before I came here. And they wanted to give me another scoop of homemade mint ice cream. And I told them that if I were to eat the second scoop, then I wouldn't be able to speak about this particular quality of a devotee. So, of course, first and foremost, everybody will be happy with this one, that it means only eating prasadam, that only eating pure vegetarian food offered to Krishna, that obviously non-vegetarian food is not required by the body. And to cause pain and grief to other creatures for something that's not required is certainly not a quality of the devotee. The devotee doesn't want to cause distress for anyone. Sometimes what can we do in order to live, in order to exist? Right? You build a house, you're going to destroy the houses of the termites and the ants and whatever are there. It's impossible to live without causing somebody some distress. But we shouldn't eat anything that's not necessary for our life and that will cause distress. So that's one meaning of this, that we should actually only eat what's necessary for our health. And then, of course, we're also talking about the kind of food that we eat. So are we eating food that's actually balanced and nutritious and healthy? So I remember, I don't know if you remember this, Murray. You were 8 years old. We were in Detroit, and there was a billboard up advertising Diet Coke. And it said, "Just for the taste of it." Do you remember that? And you looked at me and you said, "Mata, yeah, there's not real food. They're just eating it for the taste." So a lot of what people consume today is not actual food. You know, if it's 0-calorie food, then guess what? That's not food. 0-octane gas, like what is the point of that? So not eating more than required also would be, don't eat fake food. Don't take the earth's resources, don't take the wealth that Krishna's given you and spend it on fake food just for some taste sensation on the tongue. Not so I can fill up my belly with non-calorie food and won't gain any weight. So we should eat food that's real, we should eat food that's healthy, we should eat food that's one thing's in the mode of goodness that actually nourishes us. And if Krishna doesn't like it, we shouldn't eat it. So we should eat what Krishna likes. And Krishna likes a wide variety of food. And Prabhupada says Krishna consciousness is not narrow or stereotyped. But he doesn't like onions and garlic. So, okay, we're not going to eat onions and garlic. So and then of course there's just straight out quantity and calories. So not to eat more than I can digest and what's needed for my health. And of course for some of us that may be more of a struggle than for others. For some people it's a lifetime struggle. For other people it's not a struggle at all. But in that way also to try to eat what we actually need for our maintenance. and need for our health. Is that all right? And the devotee naturally does that because they're thinking, this is Krishna's body. I want to maintain it as Krishna desires. So I hope you can spend some time going through this list on your own and maybe meditating on some of these qualities, and think of how developing these Vaishnava qualities are really bringing out what's already within us. So these are all our natural qualities. If we may look at this list and feel a little intimidated by some of these, we can remember that they are all naturally existing with us, and that if we just put a little effort into developing them for Krishna's pleasure, that they will naturally arise. So thank you very much. And tomorrow at 10 o'clock, we'll be speaking, Krishna willing, at the farm on finding our nature and our personalities. We're going to look at a number of different ways of understanding our personality. We're going to look at some ways developed by psychiatrists, psychologists, sociologists. We're also going to be looking at ways from Ayurveda. We're going to be looking at ways from the Shastra, how to understand our nature. And then after kirtan and lunch tomorrow, we're going to be looking at how we can have fellowship with the devotees. So thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. And that will be at the farm.